speaking with State Senator Gustavo Rivera of New York's 33rd District. Obviously, the New York Health Act is the order of the day, especially with Roe v. Wade being overturned. Now this becomes even more of a central focus. You know, one of the things Jen and I were talking about earlier is the nonprofit industrial complex. It is a huge cog in the equation. When people think about some of the issues that we deal with here in Florida, you know, even in blue states like New York, it is a huge problem. There are factions on the left, blue, Democratic side, whatever you want to call it, that are actually in the way of the New York Health Act getting passed. And if it was passed, there wouldn't be a need for all of these nonprofits saying, we're going to protect your right to choose. No, actually, if you had universal health care, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Can you please speak on that?
But it is true that we're trying to do something that is fundamentally changing the way that we deliver healthcare, not only in the state of New York, but hopefully providing a model for the rest of the country. Now, obviously, it is not something that hasn't happened before, because basically, as Uncle Bernie tells us all the time, and everybody knows, basically every modern democracy in the world has a version of guaranteed healthcare for their citizens, right? And so we're in the state of New York, we're trying to do something that is fundamentally changing the way that, at least in the United States, it is assumed that it's the way that it needs to be done. And therefore, we bump into what I call the bird in the hand problem. It's like we have, like, for example, in the case of some folks in the labor unions, labor sector, there is some public sector unions who legitimately are saying, well, we've got this, we've negotiated for this, we've got a better health insurance package than most folks, and we've bled for it, and we've given up raises to be able to get that, and all of that is legitimate. What I'm telling them is, first of all, I want you to let the bread go, because you want to kill it. And more importantly, we're going to create a system which creates a higher floor for everybody, including your members, that, among other things, has long-term care baked into it, which is something that no health insurance product, regardless of which one it is, that you negotiated for has. But getting people to make that transition is a very, very tough thing to do. Remember when we talked about the Overturned window? This notion that this is just not the way it's done, right? The way it's done is you figure out how to get the best job you can to get the best type of insurance that you can. That notion that at the center of whether you get healthcare or not, and the quality of the healthcare that you get, is all about the insurance that you get. That is something that is pervasive and very hard to break. And so you have folks who are just resistant to the idea because they just can't think that it can be done a different way. And that's difficult, bro. That is difficult to break.
Yeah. We've had Wendell Potter on the show a couple of times, and he's great. And just from his experience and hearing what he has to say, everything you're saying about that mentality that's hard to break through is very purposeful by design, and years and millions of dollars of money, so that we do believe that, and we're fearful of anybody saying anything that would threaten that norm. Yeah. And it's very intentional. And that's it. So it's like it's fighting such a, brainwashing that we've had since probably, the 70s. Like, how long has it been since, like, the healthcare issue has been, like, in its current state? Peter, are you aware of that? I want to say it was like Nixon era, and they were talking about starting to get money for friends in the insurance industry, or like it goes back. There was something very nefarious.
Anything terrible that started is probably Nixon or Reagan, one of the two. It happened,
I can't remember if it was me or not, but I can assure you what I did was not very good. And but again, there is sort of this, we're in this trap in many ways. One of the things that New York actually does do well, extremely well, I have to say, I can't speak for the National Working Families Party, because I have a number of issues with them, but the New York Working Families Party is excellent. And Robert Buonaspina, who's a friend, I'm sure you know him, what they do to help non-corporate candidates, and especially try to alleviate a lot of these problems, I really think speaks a great deal as to expanding the electorate, because I really think that that's what we are really trying to do right now. I even find that just being down here and going to networking events that have nothing to do with politics, it's amazing how many like-minded people you can meet, getting out of those regular circles that everybody's just so accustomed to. Mm-hmm. So something as simple as dealing with this issue right now regarding abortion and recognizing that there is a religious element to it, but it's a lot more nefarious than people think, because I'm from New Jersey. You're obviously in New York. We come from the most densely Catholic concentrated population in the country, and everybody wants to throw slings and arrows in our direction, saying that it's really on us. No, this is much more deeply rooted than that. But I'm curious what it's been like being in the New York environment where the Catholic population is extremely strong and more or less in a very blue area, where they stand on this issue, if they've been vocal in any regard as far as that goes.
Well, there's some parallel here. When a few years ago, back in 2011, we passed marriage equality in the state of New York, and I remember that there were a few places in my district, and I tell this story all the time because it's part of it. It kind of gives context to the work that we do as public servants. It's like I voted for marriage equality, did so proudly, had a very good reason to do so, and there were some churches who disinvited me from ever visiting again. None of them were Catholic, though, which is weird. So they're Christian, but I mentioned that to say that while some of them did kind of speak up and say like that's terrible, and I explained to them that even though they might disagree with me on this one, that if they didn't want to invite me to their home, that's fine. I still represented them, and if they wanted to invite me, I would tell them why I did it. And if they felt that I could no longer be supported because I made this one decision, then that was on, I'll respect that, and that was on them. But during that time, I was going to make the decision that I made regardless, but I was weary. I was like, all right, so what's going to happen now as far as backlash from communities that I represent a lot of Latinos, and there's like this perception that Latinos are just overall conservative, since many of the countries that they come from, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Central America, Mexico, et cetera, are deeply, deeply religious and Catholic, that there would be that resistance. But the fact is that for the most part, at least in my personal experience, that pushback has not really been that heavily there. I think that there is an understanding. There certainly are some of the more deeply conservative folks who are just kind of like, well, this is about, they're killing babies, and they stop, right? But I have not found that the majority of people have that situation, particularly in poor working class communities where there's like, it's a fundamental thing that we have to, that when we're talking about reproductive health care, the idea of whether you have children or not, whether you have access to condoms or to pills, et cetera, all of this is kind of the everyday. That ideology doesn't feature as heavily. So I have not seen something like that in my district. In the next couple of weeks, as I continue to go out and do heavier campaigning than I've done in a while, because I have a competitive primary, particularly in parts of the district that my new district that I have never represented before, I might have something different to tell you. But for the moment, that has not been my experience.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.